What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. If you're new here, I'll introduce myself very briefly. My name is Simon Hill. I'm a Black American from Louisiana. I'm 32 years old. I'm a Muslim. I'm a husband to a beautiful wife from Turkey. I'm filming this video in Istanbul now. I'm a world traveler and an English teacher and a part-time YouTuber. Though it feels like a part-time job, that is very, very hard. No, but in all honesty, I really love doing this on the side for fun. I'm just very grateful that people find what I have to say and what I release entertaining, engaging, or informative. So I want to say thank you to everybody who's been supporting your boy, and I hope that you find something good from this video as well. But despite the cheery, rosy intro I just did, I'm going to be talking about something very serious that's happening right now. And I hope that what I have to say cuts through all the BS that's being put out there in the public square regarding this issue. Now, if you've been following my channel and my content, you know that I've spent a considerable amount of time in Africa. But if you're new here, I spent years of my life in Tunisia. I lived there for 2 years. I spent months of my life in Kenya and in Tanzania and in Mauritius. So Africa has a very special place in my heart, not just because I'm descended from people that came from there, like we all are as humans, but it's a place that I spent a lot of time. I learned a lot about myself and a lot about the world living in Africa. So it's a place that is very near and dear to me, and I hope to go back, inshallah. I do not claim at all to be an expert on Africa just because I spent a good amount of time in 4 of the 54 countries of this very large continent. I know that each of the countries are individually different with their own history, culture, and people, but today we're going to be talking about what's happening in Niger, the coup in Niger, and the Sahel region in general. Now, some of you might be asking, what is a Niger, or where is a Niger? And if you're white, you might be asking, can I even say the word Niger? Niger is a very large country, geographically and population-wise, in the Sahel region of Africa. What is the Sahel of Africa? Sahel is the Arabic word for coast. And despite you possibly thinking right now, Niger might have a beautiful beach. It's a landlocked country. Coast, in this case, refers to the coast of the Sahara Desert. It's on the edge of the Sahara Desert. And there are many countries that populate the Sahel, from Senegal in the west all the way to Eritrea in the east. Some of the major countries there are Mali, Chad, Sudan, Senegal, Burkina Faso, and some others as well. I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to say them all. While there are more languages and ethnic groups within just one of these Sahel countries, more than there are hairs on my chin, by and large, the people in this region of Africa can be classified as Black Africans. Islam is the predominant religion in the region, and unfortunately, like many parts of Africa, the people are financially poor, while the countries themselves, the region itself, is materially rich. Under the feet of people who walk the soil on that part of the earth are mountains of gold, diamonds, platinum, uranium, you name it, it's there. These vast, valuable natural resources, as well as the people that should rightfully lay claim to them because they inhabit the region, have been the target of exploitation from people outside of Africa for centuries. I'm throwing shots at you, Portugal, United Kingdom, Spain, Netherlands, and other European nations, but I'm particularly directing my ire at you, France, the colonial and neo-colonial power in Europe that has consistently exploited Africa for its people and resources for centuries. France, like many other European colonials, left a notoriously long-lasting negative impact on the African psychology, geography, and economy, especially noted in language, with there now being more French speakers in Africa than there is in Europe in its entirety. On top of that, when African nations gained their independence, these countries were put into exploitative neo-colonial trade deals where their natural resources were exchanged for pennies on the dollar. And on top of that, France and other European nations have contributed to the brain drain from Africa, where the most talented engineers, doctors, scientists, lawyers, the professional bourgeoisie class have been extracted to go work in Europe. On top of that, the currency mostly used in the Sahel region and in the West African region is the CFA franc, a currency that for a long time was controlled by France's bank, Literally, these African nations could not even control their own money. And the CFA franc now is pegged to the euro, creating even more African dependence on former colonial powers. I mentioned earlier that I used to live in Tunisia, which was also a country that was colonized by France. And to this day, French is a working language there. If you go to the bank and you open a bank account, or if you look at your bank statements, it's all in French. If you pay your taxes, it's all in French. You go to university and study, it's all in French. And French is seen there as the language of sophistication and class, and only uneducated people can't speak French properly. I remember when I was teaching English in Tunisia, one of my students was an older gentleman who worked in a bank. And during one of our long conversations, he schooled me about this. A long time ago, before Tunisia even got its independence, they signed a trade deal with France to extract phosphate, which is a very vital material used in fertilizer to grow the tons of food that we consume every year. Morocco is actually the #1 consumer of phosphate, but that's a different story. Anyway, France, to this day, is paying the same price for Tunisian phosphate that they did 100 years ago. Now, I didn't verify this claim, and I wouldn't even know how to, but sometimes the sentiment signals more than the statistics, meaning the feeling behind the information that's given to you says more sometimes than the actual facts. I say that because while there in that North African country heavily influenced by France, I heard a lot of anti-French sentiment. Some of the information was almost obviously false, but then other stuff was verifiably true, such as the well-documented racism against North African migrants and Black Southern African migrants in the actual country of France. Generally, when you have discourse with people from Francophone Africa, or read or watch what they post online about France, they are saying that France is exploitative to Africa, France is corrupt in Africa, France is killing or deposing good African leaders, helping and giving money to bad African leaders, not doing enough to fight the Islamist terrorists in the Sahel that they say they want to stop so much, or even worse, helping and supporting the terrorists. And it's making people hot. People are mad. They hate France. Hell, got me hating France too, and I'm not even from Francophone Africa. Got me ready to slap Jean-Pierre with a baguette. Come on now. All right, I'm calm now. I don't hate anybody. But in all seriousness, there is a lot of anti-French feelings out there right now, especially in Africa. And to top it all off, the people in Africa are young. It's the youngest continent in the world with the highest population growth in the world now. And getting back to Niger, half of the population of Niger is under 15 years old, out of 24 million people. It kind of goes without saying, a lot of poverty, a lot of young people, not a lot of options or opportunity leads to not a lot of good outcomes. That's probably why the youngest president in the world is this handsome man you're looking at right here. At 34 years old, Ibrahim Traoré is the president of Burkina Faso. He came to power in 2022 after he overthrew another guy who overthrew the president in that same year. And he's been in power ever since. Keep it real. Would you smash or would you pass?
Pass.
Wow.
He looks like a man-child. Sorry. Like, he got scars and stuff and the tough looks, but he still looks like Babyface.
Wow. I love my wife, but I'm still mad that at 34 years old, this man has done more with his life than I have. What the fuck? But that hasn't been the only coup to happen recently in this region. This stately gentleman you're looking at here is the current president of Mali. Born in 1980, Colonel Assimi Goïta is a soldier who first led a coup against the democratically elected president of Mali, Ibrahim Keïta, and he put another guy in charge named Ba Ndewa. But when Ba didn't meet his standards, Assimi overthrew him in 2021, and he has been the president of Mali ever since. If you can't tell by my tone, I'm not a fan of the military juntas. But you gotta admit, with the fatigues, the berets, the face masks, the boots, dark sunglasses, African warlord is an aesthetic. And now the trend of the guys with guns calling the shots in West Africa has spread to Niger. On July 26, 2023, a bloodless coup happened led by Abdurrahman Tichiani to overthrow this man, Mohamed Bazoum, the democratically elected president of Niger, who came to power in 2021 after winning an election against the former president and leading a peaceful transition of power. Bazoum wanted closer ties to the West, but Tichiani and his cohorts believe that Mohamed Bazoum was not doing enough to fight the terrorists in the Sahel who are terrorizing the Nigerian people. But rumors are circulating that Tichiani was actually just about to be fired by Bazoum and instead decided to lead a coup instead of getting $1 million and fading off into the sunset. Okay, Acti, smash or pass?
This is definitely Cat Daddy.
Wow.
This is like my sugar daddy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next.
We have the queen. Yes, queen. He looks like he was on RuPaul's Drag Race. She was a comedy queen.
Wow, you're about to get banned from Niger.
She has the facial structure.
Okay.
And this is my Indian uncle. I'm sorry. He's asking me like, when are you gonna get married?
Oh, God. I forgot to mention that earlier in 2021, there was a coup in the West African nation of Guinea that borders Mali, where a group of soldiers overthrew the democratically elected president Alpha Conde and replaced him with this guy, Mamadi Doumbouya. But I think the point is already made that the guys with guns run West Africa, plus how he met his wife is probably a much more interesting story. Anyway, I do not purport to be an expert on all things related to West Africa. I'm just a guy with an opinion and a cell phone. I know I can't pronounce anything right, so don't come for me. Anyway, when the coup happened in Niger, many Nigerian citizens stood up and protested in the capital Niamey against the military junta, but the army quelled that very quickly. Following the coup, condemnation came from the European Union, especially France, which sources a lot of uranium from Niger to power their nuclear power plants. Disapproval also came from the United States, my home country, because we have one of the largest military drone bases in Niger, and instability is not what Uncle Sam likes. But I honestly don't give a fuck what the European Union or the USA have to say about what happens in Africa, because in the words of the prophet, Michael Jackson, peace be upon him, they don't really care about us. What I do care about is what other Africans have to say about this, especially ECOWAS. ECOWAS stands for the Economic Community of West African States. Started in 1975 and headquartered in Abuja, Nigeria, you can think of it like a smaller African Union, where 15 West African nations came together to create closer economic ties, more economic opportunity, growth, stability, and development in the region. However, the countries mentioned before that had coups are all now suspended from ECOWAS. The other countries, still members of ECOWAS, severely condemned the coup that happened in Niger, especially Nigeria, which cut off energy supplies to Niger, causing blackouts throughout the country. However, the countries in ECOWAS that are suspended, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, all supported the coup in Niger. ECOWAS does have an army or a peacekeeping force similar to like the United Nations has, where a coalition of soldiers from the various nations come together to do the bidding of the organization, and ECOWAS threatened military intervention against Niger if Mohamed Bazoum, the democratically elected president, was not put back in charge, and Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Mali all said that if Niger is invaded, they will support Niger, creating the possibility for a potential war in West Africa. If ECOWAS did invade Niger, it wouldn't be the first time the organization used military intervention to stop attacks on democracy. Back in 2017, in a small country called the Gambia, this guy, the president, named Yahya Jammeh, who had been in power since 1996 and was a brutal leader who killed his own people, clearly lost the election but tried to stay in power anyway. ECOWAS intervened, sent in troops, and finally allowed the voices of the Gambian people to be heard. Yahya now lives in exile in Equatorial Guinea, and the new president, Adama Barrow, has been in power since 2017. I'm not a paid spokesman for ECOWAS. Mohamed Bazoum is not funneling me money, but if anybody does want to send me some cash, the link to my PayPal is in the description. Hit me up. I am not saying at all or implying at all that the African leaders who came to power democratically or did not come to power without the use of military force against their own governments are not above corruption, or they are totally for the liberation and growth of the African people in their nations. I come from the United States of America, where our politicians speak highly about our democracy, but we all know it's a load of crap, and all these guys are corrupt as well. I am also not trying to diminish the repeated calls for security and protection from the Islamist terrorists that are plaguing the people in the Sahel region, which has been the stated reason from the coup leaders as to why they overthrew the presidents of their countries. I understand. But what I don't understand are the talking points coming out of the mouths of other black people on social media and platforms like YouTube, praising the coup leaders, praising warlords. I don't understand where you people are coming from. So let me get this right. We are so righteously angered about colonialism that happened in the past, and rightfully frustrated about neocolonialism that happens now, that when a guy shows up in fly fascist fashion like Ibrahim Traore and says a few platitudes like Africa is for Africans or a new Africa is emerging, we abandon, we let go of all hopes, all dreams of democracy for black people in Africa just to tell France to suck our dicks. We are so financially destitute that we are willing to put the futures of millions of black children in the hands of Assimi Goïta just to spit in the face of France. We are so scared of Muslim extremists that we need a strong man like Abdurrahman Tichiani to beat those guys back and also to send a big fuck you to France. I am not saying or implying at all that the people of Mali, Niger, or Guinea like their military leaders or want that system of government, because I'm pretty sure, like most people around the world, they're ambivalent and nonchalant about politics, and they just want to go about their day and take care of themselves and their families. Who I am talking to, though, are you niggas online talking real crazy, talking about, yeah, this is what we need in Africa. Finally, men are standing up against Western hegemony, and we're going to finally fight back against those colonial powers by trusting these soldiers, these warlords. Yeah, these are the people that we need to lead Africa into the 21st century. These guys. Nigga, I'm not gonna say names or provide receipts because I don't go back and forth with people on the internet for clout, and I don't drag people's names into my content for clicks and likes. But the majority of the content, which you will find on YouTube from other black people, at least in the Anglophone world, talking about the coup in Niger, is giving a lot of black fascist vibes, pro-coup sentiment. And bro, that's not wavy. The irony of it is this. If you ask the majority of those English-speaking black people on social media who are explicitly or implicitly supporting the coups in West Africa right now, hey, are you a Pan-African? The majority of them will probably say yes. But they don't see the inherent contradiction of saying on one hand that they want self-determination and liberation for black people in Africa, while at the same time saying that the democratic institutions to make that self-determination and liberation possible can be overthrown by enough guys with big-ass guns. You're the Pan-Africanist who wants a United States of Africa. Meanwhile, when we have an organization like ECOWAS, though imperfect it may be, standing up against a guy who was a soldier who was just about to lose his job and instead chose to take over the country, you take the side of the guy who was about to get canned instead of a collection of African nations telling that guy, buddy, that's not how it goes. You're the pro-black Pan-Africanist who wants Africa to be united and strong, but you have failed to learn from history, from all the other strong men in Africa who came to power in similar ways through coups and stayed in power for years and became rich, fat, and corrupt dickheads who kept their people poor, ignorant, and dispossessed. You don't think these guys will do the same? Is there an argument to be made that Western liberal democracy is a concept foreign to Africa and there needs to be a different system in place because Western democracy doesn't work in this context? Yes, there is an argument. Not saying I agree with it, but I can understand if somebody makes that argument. But is the answer to Western democracy warlordism? The guys with the most guns and the most Toyota pickup trucks run into the Capitol, take over the government, and that's it? That's what happens every 4 or 5 years? That's a better system? I hope when the united country of Africa that you guys dream and talk so much about does come true, that it's not just one large continent ran by some guy in a funny beret who thinks he has the big swinging dick, telling people Africa is for Africans and this new Africa has emerged. Meanwhile, the people are still poor, still dispossessed, and still ignorant. I hope that's not the Africa you guys want. Maybe you guys say shit on the internet just because you think it's funny or it's cool or just for clicks and likes. But when you've actually been to Africa, when you actually step foot on the continent and start talking to people, you'll realize that it's not a game. It's not funny when your government changes overnight and you're insecure about your future. It's not funny when the lights cut off because Nigeria cut the power off in your country. It's not funny when the police are saying it's a curfew and anybody caught outside could get shot. It's not cool. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to live under that sort of system. Maybe a lot of you black men who are talking about the coup in Niger and other places see pictures of these warlords and these leaders in their cool military fatigues, and you're living vicariously through them, and you have all these fantasies of being the big tough guy who's going to stick it to France and all that stuff. But please, guys, hold back your reins and let's be real. These coup leaders, once they're in power, they're going to do the same thing that the Idi Amins did before. Hoard wealth for themselves and their cohorts, send it all to Europe anyway, and continue to oppress the black people in these countries. Does that mean that we have to be perpetual bitches to the EU and the USA? No. Does that mean that we have to continue to suffer under neocolonialism and neoliberalism? No. But does that mean that we should applaud when we oppress ourselves? Hell no. Look, if the coup leaders prove me wrong and they transition their governments into a system where the black people of these countries actually have a say in what happens and they create better and more sustainable and prosperous lives for the people in these countries, and they don't just hoard power to themselves and try to keep it as long as they can, I will delete this video and never talk about West Africa again. But I would bet every dollar in my bank account they're just going to do what happened before. Hoard wealth to themselves, hoard power to themselves by any means necessary, and we're going to have another coup all over again. Might be in 1 year, might be in 5, might be in 10, but I find it hard to believe these guys really want to see a better Africa where everybody eats. As of recording this video now on August 10th, 2023, Niger has cut off all uranium exports to France, which is necessary for France's nuclear energy supply network. But we all know within a few months or maybe a year, whether the coup guys are there or not, Niger will once again start trading uranium with France. And do you actually think that the coup leaders are not going to just take the billions of dollars that are generated from this deal and just line their own pockets? Do you actually think this will go into the hands of the average Nigerian? If I got to power with a gun, what motivates me to actually share it with anybody who didn't take that risk with me? And as of recording right now, many Nigerians who support the coup attacked the French embassy. And in rallies in support of the coup, Nigerians are waving Russian flags. And I think it goes without saying, because this should be obvious to everyone who is against colonialism in Africa, attacking another group of non-Africans for the sake of or on behalf of another group of non-Africans is not pan-African. Even if they're waving Russian flags just to throw a big middle finger to France and the EU, or if they're waving Russian flags just to get grain and wheat from Russia to help feed the millions of people in Niger who suffer from food insecurity, or if they're waving Russian flags just to get help from Russia's mercenary group, Wagner, it's all bad. We as black people, we got to take care of ourselves, and we can't be looking to non-Africans to help us. And we can't be oppressing ourselves like this, embarrassing ourselves like this. I said it before in the video I made about Tanzania, but I'll say it again here. We as black people don't own anything in this white supremacist world, except our countries. And even though our countries are colonial constructs with arbitrary borders that were drawn by non-Africans, these are still valuable assets that we can hold on to and manage well, but not like this. Not with warlords fighting and vying for power over who's going to be the fattest man at the top. That's not the way for us to move forward as a people. That's not a way to manage what God has given us well, and we need to do better. And let us never forget the old African saying, when elephants fight, it's only the grass that gets hurt. Niger, like every other country in Africa, is full of young, beautiful, vibrant people who are hoping for a better future for themselves and their families, just like you and I. And let us never, ever fall into the trap of thinking that people who so selfishly want power that they will take it by force, that they will ever care about us. Let's unite to take care of each other and Africa. Peace.